All right. Hi, good evening, everybody. Great to see you. Nice to see you, Logan. Welcome. We accept people who have graduated already to come and join us, and people from the community. So it's wonderful to have everybody here. Tonight we're going to dive into the work of an organization that is now called Farm Connect Montana. It was previously the Community Food and Agriculture Coalition, and they're in this sort of soft, what's that term? Soft launch of their new name. I'm so hip. Okay. But I forgot to grab some blank index cards, so if anybody has some, great. Or you could just take a scrap, half a piece of paper or whatever, and write your comments for tonight on those. I do have your papers also to give back, and I think you have some to give me. So we'll save like 5 minutes or so at the end for us to do some paper shuffling. So I want to briefly introduce our panelists tonight. This is an organization that is near and dear to my heart. I was lucky enough to be part of a group of people that helped launch it almost 20 years ago. It's really kind of a wild thing to think about that. And some of you may not even be 20 yet. So there you go. But I asked a number of community organizations in town to come and talk to us about their work and share their, some description of their programs. And this was high on the list of groups that I wanted to introduce you all to in more detail. You may have heard of them, but you may not know all the details about what they do. Thanks a lot, Clifford. So first up, we're going to start with Jenny Zaso-Hitchcock. Jenny is the Communications and Development Director at Farm Connect Montana. She comes from a background in leadership, development, meaning like fundraising, communications, and strategic planning in both the nonprofit and for-profit sectors. She has a MBA, a business degree, in green business and nonprofit management from Antioch University of New England, which is a very cool school, just so you know. Jenny grew up on a dairy farm in western New York. Where was that?
It's called Perry, New York, in Wyoming County, which is has more cows than people in it.
More cows than people, just like Montana.
Has ever heard of
well, I went to school in upstate New York and spent a lot of time there.
You're Geneseo, if you know what that is.
Her father leased conserved agricultural lands for his dairy operation. She's worked at community vegetable farms. During her graduate school, she served on the board of a county food pantry and hot meals program, and she worked to conserve farmland in the Northeast. And she's been doing a terrific job as Communications and Development Director at CFAC over several years. I'll introduce the other folks as well before I turn it over to them. After Jenny speaks, we'll hear from Mary Ellis, who is the director of the Beginning Farmer and Rancher program that CFAC operates, Farm Connect Montana. And so she oversees all aspects of the Beginning Farmer Rancher program, including project and program development, evaluation, managing the Land Link program, which connects people who have agricultural land, they want to see stay in agriculture, with people who are looking for agricultural land. Was the first program that was created as part of the organization and actually came out of some work done in the Environmental Studies graduate program. She also organizes classes and workshops across the state. She got her BS in biology in 2014, spent several years serving with AmeriCorps and Food Corps establishing high school farms in Oregon and working on a local organic farm. She then came to the University of Montana and got her MS in environmental studies with a focus on sustainable food and farming systems, and did a really beautiful thesis on how farmers who participate in the conservation stewardship program, which is one of the, I would say is one of the best farm bill programs that the federal government offers. And she did a great study interviewing people who participate in that and what they thought worked well and so on, and what recommendations they have. Last but not least is Ian Finch, also an alum of the Environmental Studies program, but from our undergraduate program. He was a tremendous leader here on campus in social justice and food-related issues. He directs the food access program at CFAC, or Farm Connect Montana. He was born and raised in Montana, in Helena. He was shaped by our vast mountains and plains, and he's committed to working towards a food system that's socially just, regenerative, and culturally sound. He has experience farming in Montana, Washington, and Oregon. He also has worked he didn't have this in his bio, but he's worked as a chef and in the food service arena as well. He was a leader here on campus in our Farm to College program. Worked at that for a while. Worked with the Real Food Challenge, which is also a really interesting, terrific organization of young people across the country. So right now, for the last 4 years, he's worked to bring food access programs like the Double Snap Dollars programs to communities across the state, and I expect we'll be hearing more about that tonight. So it's really a pleasure to have you all here, and they're going to each speak in turn, but then they really want to have a dialogue and discussion for a chunk of the evening, so be thinking about good questions as we go along, and I'll turn it over to Jenny. Welcome these guys.
Thank you. So the title of our presentation is actually also our organization's tagline, which is really important because these are the three main areas that we focus on: farms or farmland, farmers, and food for all. We believe that these are all really interconnected, important parts of the local food system, and they work together to build a resilient local food system that sets us up for the future, living on a warming planet, as well as a lot of the other issues and challenges that we face that each of us will talk about in our program areas. Just to set the stage a little bit for our quick-ish presentation, as we'll talk a little bit about our early history, our mission and vision, and we'll dive deeper into programs that are underneath farms, farmers, and food for all, and then end with a little talk about how we do some community engagement around our whole organization. So early history, I'm going to also accidentally say CFAC, but Farm Connect Montana, I almost just did it right off the bat. Founded in 2005 in response to a Missoula County Community Food Assessment. And Neva, please jump into the slide if anything is missing or you want to add anything about the early origin story. Originally a more policy-focused advocacy local food coalition structure. We transitioned to a nonprofit in 2008. To start implementing programs with Bonnie Buckingham as founding executive director, and she is still our executive director today. Early highlights, so Farm Connect brought SNAP EBT, so that's food stamps, to farmers markets in Montana for the first time, which is one of our really early highlights and things that we worked on, and then also protecting agricultural land through representation in the subdivision process in Missoula County. So if anyone has questions on that in the Q&A portion, because that's there's a lot of technical knowledge in there, please ask. And then, as we've mentioned, known as CFAC for the first 20 years until this month. So we're all getting used to Farm Connect Montana. I hate reading off of slides, but it's important to know our mission is to grow a healthy local food community by preserving farmland, teaching new farmers, and making food accessible for all. And our vision for the future is a Montana where houses, farms, and ranches thrive together. People are well fed and food secure. Family farms are supported within a community food system, and beginning farmers and ranchers can access agricultural land to feed the rest of us. So that's what we do in a nutshell, and what our programs are based on fulfilling this vision. I wanted to include a slide about our partnerships and collaborations. I think nonprofits in Missoula are really great at collaborating, but I do have to say I think where Farm Connect is really unique is we have very strong networks across all of our programs. We work with a lot of different partners, not just as sponsors, not just as, on like a surface level. We're very deeply connected to everybody on this screen and rely on them to implement our programs across the state. So we started as a Missoula-based nonprofit. We are now a statewide Montana organization and work with these partners to make that happen. So starting with the farms part of our tagline, so this is where we work on farmland conservation. So while I'm Development and Communications Director, I am also one of the lead staff in conservation projects along with Bonnie and Mary as well. So a few things that we're working on currently, we have a small agricultural land conservation program with Missoula County. So we are working to try to help landowners here in Missoula County conserve their smaller agricultural parcels. So these are our local farms that we know and love that are kind of on the edge of the city that supply a lot of our local food to our local farmers markets, food pantries, and just for consumers in general, our restaurants and other wholesale buyers. So really trying to conserve the really important agricultural soils that are right outside of town, which again, if we're talking about living in a warming climate, having our food as close to us as possible, not having those transportation costs and barriers is really important. So we work a lot on that, and we are working to create a program around a new conservation tool. Some of you may have heard of a conservation easement. There is another tool that Montana has not used in agriculture very much yet, so we're kind of stepping out and piloting this in Missoula County and seeing how it goes, but it is called a agricultural servitude or conservation servitude. It's a terrible, terrible name, but that is the legal term for it, and that is helping landowners protect their agricultural land, introduce beginning farmers and ranchers to that land, kind of reducing some of the barriers and affordability, and providing another tool other than the easement, which is a really hard tool to get off the ground when land trusts, which do agricultural conservation easements, are so busy right now that these smaller farms are just not accepting or working with those landowners. So we are trying to fill that gap. LandLink, Mary will talk a little bit more in depth about this, but it does kind of weave into our farms and farmland programming. So connecting farmers and ranchers seeking land with landowners looking to sell or lease land. And we also provide landowner and land seeker lease mediation workshop and resources. And land access support and education for beginning farmers. So that is our land conservation work in a nutshell. I am going to pass it off to Mary to talk about our work directly with farmers.
Thanks, Jenny. Like Neva said, my name is Mary, and I am the director of the Beginning Farm Rancher program, and so I get to work with all of the new and beginning farmers, mostly in Western Montana, but we really work with folks all across the state now that we have more access to virtual trainings and programs. And so I'm going to share a little bit about why we do what we do, some of the barriers and challenges for beginning farmers, and then share what we do. So some of these you guys may be familiar with, but I wanted to share them in case you aren't. But one of the top barriers for folks who want to start a farm is land access, and probably familiar with the price of land across Montana and across the country right now. And we want to help reduce some of those barriers to accessing land. If someone wants to farm, helping them get on some land in Montana. And then access to capital is also a huge barrier. So getting a loan or grants or anything to start a farm can be really difficult. Just the process of going through that, and also getting loans for potential businesses that haven't started yet, or land that doesn't have any infrastructure on it, can be pretty hard. That also leads into access to appropriate equipment and infrastructure if you're starting a farm. So the upfront cost of starting a farm can be really big, because you often have to do things like put up a deer fence, or buy and build structures to protect animals, or really expensive tractors and implements. And so that can be a huge barrier for folks as well, is that upfront costs to starting their operation, and you have to buy all those things before you're even selling anything. And then another thing is business and production planning. So as a beginning farmer, you really have to wear a lot of hats. You're a soil scientist, you're a marketer, you're a business planner and financial planner. You have to do all these things at once, which kind of makes it hard to gain all those skills at one time. And so often people come to us and they're like, I really know how to grow vegetables, but don't know what I need to put in a business plan, or don't know how to sell this product, even though I grow the best, pumpkins in town, whatever it is. So that can be a big barrier. And then also finding mentors or community support. When everyone is really busy, and established farmers are busy growing their own food and growing their own farms, it can be hard to find that network and support and tie into people that are already there. And sometimes there are really strong farming communities, but if you're a new farmer and you're trying to get into that community, it can sometimes be harder to tap in. And so I'm going to share a little bit about what we do to help hopefully reduce some of those barriers and support all these folks, because if someone wants to farm, we want to help them start a farm. So one of the programs that Neva mentioned and Jenny mentioned is our Land Link program, and then we also have a Work Link program. And I'll show a slide with a map so you can see this a little better. But basically our Work Link program is focused on helping established farmers find workers for their land or for their farms. And our Land Link program is really pairing new farmers, we call them land seekers, looking for land, with landowners who have land that's they're looking to either sell or lease. And we'll be able to show that map real quick. This is actually an old site. We're just about to launch the new site. But you can kind of see how it's made up. You basically have these little tabs, and our new site will be somewhat similar, where you can search for farm jobs, you can search for land available, and then our new site will have the ability to chat and communicate with a potential landowner or with a potential employer. And so kind of a way to network and find both work and land, and we'll just keep adding to it all the time with the other resources as well. But this is the old site, so our new site will be coming soon. But yeah, that's two of our main programs. And then another big one is that we just launched this spring, actually, is our farmer tool library. So what I mentioned earlier about accessing expensive equipment when you're first starting a farm, we're hoping to reduce that barrier, but now we have access just like a membership basis, but people can become a member of the tool library, and then for a small fee can have access to a 42 horsepower tractor, a walk-behind tractor, which is basically just like a small push tractor, if you haven't seen one of those, and then we have implements for both of those. And so you can rent a tractor from us for, we have like 4 and 5 day stints where you could rent them. And so that hopefully that would reduce your need to buy one right away, and you can buy one when you're ready financially. We also have implements that are really expensive, but you may only need once or twice. And so that can be really hard. It's like, oh, I only need to till or mow once or twice a year, but it's like $5,000 for that implement. So you can rent it from us for $50, and then you only need it a few times a year. So hoping to reduce that barrier, and along with that is our one-on-one technical assistance. And so for folks who maybe have never driven a tractor or maybe worked on farms and they weren't the ones that were allowed to hop on the tractor, they didn't get that experience. I know I worked on farms and it was often this one person that was in charge of tractor work, and I often didn't get time even though I spent years working on farms. And so We'll provide that one-on-one free assistance where you can learn how to drive a tractor, you can learn how to work some of these implements in a safe space. Our tool librarian, Jillian, is amazing, and she's very kind and supportive and helpful in getting those, just teaching those skills. But then also with the one-on-one technical assistance, you can, we do also business planning or marketing, lease mediation, like Jenny mentioned. So if you're putting together a lease and you don't know how to do it and you want to make sure you do it right, we can have that conversation and we can help you put it together and help you go into those conversations ready and prepared, because those can be really hard. And also we do a lot of like one-on-one technical assistance for those who want to start doing organic production and need help with that certification process. Really, if you can think of it, we can probably do it, or at least connect you to the person that has the knowledge to do it. And then one of my favorite programs that we do right now is our Certified Farm Startup program. So that's an educational program that's 5 or 6 virtual online workshops, and then we have 5 or 6 in-person workshops or field days. And so that's for anyone who is looking to start an operation and kind of in that phase, they're like, maybe they don't have a business plan yet, maybe they need to learn more skills, maybe they need to kind of bolster up some of their knowledge in some of these areas, and they want to connect with other beginning farmers in the community. So we get them together. We have like this last year we had a 2-day event where we learned about equipment, we learned about soil testing, and people had 2 full days just interact and learn from each other, and people came from all across the state to go to that. Yeah, I feel like I could go on to this for a while, so I'm just going to stop myself there, but I'd love to, if you guys have questions and want to talk more during the Q&A session. I'll pass it off to Ian.
All right. Thanks, Mary. Hi, everyone. My name is Ian Finch. Thanks for the introduction, Neva, and thank you all for being here on this cold, kind of dark night. We know this probably isn't a requirement for you all. So my family moved to Montana around 115 years ago to a tiny little town in eastern Montana called Sumatra, and started a homestead there back in the days of the Homestead Act, which is actually incredibly politically charged with how I, in my current job, interface with equity and programming in Native American communities. And I just want to acknowledge that we're still here today. We're still trying to undo some of that damage that was done. And I think a lot of that has kind of fueled me into the work that I do today and is a really deep core part of me. And I also wanted to share that, while I was trying to become a farmer after college, I wanted to get out, I wanted to be in the field, I wanted to get my hands dirty, get out of the classroom, and really get into the soil. And that was actually one of the times of my life where I actually realized that I needed assistance myself, and I ended up being on food stamps, which is now called SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And I think it's really interesting that we actually see a lot of connection between food access and farming, and that a lot of farmers actually are on SNAP. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't know. And you may be able to produce the food for your family, those fresh fruits and vegetables, maybe some pulses, some legumes, but you really still can't afford everything, or you can't grow everything for yourself. And so there's still this connection in between farming and food assistance. And I think that's something that would be really interesting to explore in the future for a student project or something like that. But for our food access program, again, we really are working to help people in Montana find ways to access local food. And at the same time, we're trying to build new markets for the beginning farmers and ranchers, and for all farmers and ranchers in the state who are looking to sell kind of outside of those traditional wholesale and retail markets. And they're maybe looking to support people in their community who just have a little more need. And we really enjoy working with those farmers. And I'll get into kind of like how many farmers are participating in this work across the state, where people are able to access this food. But we're building new markets for farmers, and then we're connecting consumers to those markets as we build them, kind of through this financial assistance that we have. And on the screen, for those who maybe are watching on MCAT, we're looking at pictures of hands at farmers markets exchanging tokens instead of money for fruits and vegetables. We see people shopping at farm stands throughout Missoula Valley as part of our Bike to Barns tour. We're seeing people excited about creating food and learning about nutritious fruits and vegetables in the classroom setting as part of our Montanans Who Cook program that I actually probably won't talk too much about today. And then finally, we see a picture here at the Billings Healthy by Design Market of people shopping with their kids and kind of exposing them to new ways of thinking about food. So again, the Food for All goes into our food access program. CFAC was originally, as Jenny was saying, this policy think tank, this farmer support, and then about 10 years ago in 2015, we kind of dove into the food access world because there was a great need. And there had been some kind of pilot programs. We had piloted EBT at farmers markets so that people who had federal food assistance benefits could access that locally produced food. But it's really grown since then. And we've needed to grow it because there are some statistics that I want to share with folks about why we need to have food access programs in Montana. It might not be, unknown to people that 1 in 9 people in Montana, more than 10% of our population is experiencing hunger and is food insecure, and that includes farmers in our community as well. Montana's rural nature, our extreme distances between population centers, rural centers, and places where people can access that food further exacerbates that symptom of our society and of our systems of kind of creating this scarcity mindset and enabling the system to not serve everyone the way that we'd like to see people be served. Half of Montana's counties are defined as food deserts, which means that people have to travel 10 miles or further to access any kind of food, whether that's a grocery store, farmer's market, or a farm. And the consequences are severe. We know that food insecurity and hunger leads to higher rates of physical and mental health challenges. Children have impaired cognitive development and lower scores and even have isolation. And so do seniors. Seniors who are experiencing food insecurity are often some of the most remote, some of the most isolated individuals. So it's really important that we kind of think about kids, think about families, think about seniors while we're trying to spread this work across the state. Just quickly, I think, we're here to kind of think about how all of this connects to climate change on this warming planet. And I do want to say that the system is creating challenges that create conditions where I think society at large thinks that we have this privilege that enables us to get local food, and that some people don't have the resources to tackle these complicated issues of climate change if they're not going to get their food that day because we kind of need to prioritize what we're thinking about. I actually think through my experiences with our participants that is not quite true. And I have seen through my lived experience that a lot of participants in the SNAP program that I interface with are actually very concerned about climate change. And they do have the time and space and resources to think about it while also being on their food journey. And so I just wanted to kind of switch that narrative a little bit because reality is different. And our participants are some of our best advocates. And even when we ask for money donations, our participants are actually some of the people who donate first. And so just go participants, go people. So anyway, just quickly, our Farm Connect programs, the Double SNAP Dollars program is our largest. SNAP EBT is the largest food support program in the nation. In Montana alone, Montanans spend $12 million in benefits through the SNAP program every month. And so that's really what we're thinking about, $12 million a month getting spent on food through SNAP. How do we capture those sales and get those to local farmers? And it takes a lot of work building out all these food access sites that I'll talk about in just a minute. Our second one, over to the left there, that kind of green icon, sorry you can't see it, that's the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. That's a federal and state-run program that our organization has been contracting with the State Department of Public Health and Human Services for the last 3 years. It was just identified that Farm Connect has this great network of farmers markets and farmers, and so we were a good fit for that program. We'll see what happens with the Farm Bill. There's a lot up in the air for it next year. And then our third program that's kind of homegrown through Farm Connect Montana is the Montana Produce Prescription Collaborative. And for that, we are actually working with 8 different healthcare clinics across the state to integrate food and nutrition security into prescriptions for clients who are maybe at risk of or experiencing diabetes or heart disease, which are some of the best kind of health chronic conditions that we can actually address with food, either preventatively or as treatment, rather than relying on pharmaceutical drugs. Some partner programs, we're not the only people in the state that are helping people access food. Obviously, the SNAP program itself is the largest. WIC, Montana Women's Infants and Children, is kind of that second largest kind of state program. They have offices in almost every county across the state on all the reservations. They actually provide nutrition counseling for clients. And then they have both their standard benefits and farm direct benefits, which are also just for farmers markets for those participants. So the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program and the WIC Farm Direct Program are just for farmers markets and direct marketing farmers, whereas SNAP and Double SNAP dollars can be spent at farmers markets, directly with farmers, and at grocery stores as well. And then Montana Produce Prescription Collaborative, again, is at that healthcare setting, and those participants are mostly at this point going to grocery stores, and we're really working with some of those grocery stores around local sourcing, which is maybe some opportunity in the future. And I just wanted to point out one more. Has anyone heard of the Sunbucks program? This is a brand new federal benefit program that is launching in Montana this month. Technically, it's called Summer EBT. We're a little behind on the implementation heading into fall and winter, but basically this is recognizing that a lot of kiddos in the school system are not able to go to those congregate meals, to those feeding programs throughout the summer. And this was really recognized during the pandemic that, there is isolation. There are moments where people can't get to those food sites. So Sunbucks is another EBT program like SNAP where every family that has a child that qualifies for free or reduced school meals gets $300 loaded onto an EBT card, and they only have 4 months to spend it, but they get $300 per kid. And that's going to be a permanent program that we'll have every year as long as the state's willing to put in a state plan each year, and if we can maintain support from our government. Our program reach, I think this is something Farm Connect can be really proud of. Back in 2015, when we were starting our food access program, we were working with 4 different locations in Missoula, the Northside Community Development Corporation, and the 3 farmers markets, to basically kind of pilot test this in Missoula. And across the programs I was mentioning, we actually have 79 food access sites across the state in 2024. The orange dots on the map that you see are the Double SNAP dollars locations. The green locations on the map are for that Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. And the red ones are kind of being obscured, but those are where the health clinics are located that are helping people access food as part of their prescription health treatment. Challenges are numerous, of course, but I think our impacts are even better. It takes a lot to understand the complexities of all these programs, and we're trying to get both participants and farmers, food providers to meet in the middle. And I want to say it's not an easy challenge. If you go to a farmer's market, if you're a farmer and you're showing up, you might have to deal with 8 to 10 different tender types or currencies. We've got cash, credit, debit, SNAP, Double SNAP, all these other benefit programs, and maybe the farmers markets even have their own. And so there's just a lot to navigate when kind of helping farmers and participants navigate all of this. As you all know, in some of your classes, stigma is a big thing. We're talking about people kind of needing to ask for help. And so we really like to address that. SNAP itself moved from a paper voucher to an EBT debit card, so there's no, you don't identify yourself as a participant when you're using these programs. And a lot of these other homegrown programs we have, we're not quite there with the technology yet, but we're working on it. There's a lack of state support in Montana for food access programs in general. I'd love for people to ask questions about that. The need for greater federal support and flexibility as well with these programs. So a lot of the programs that Farm Connect is hosting are competitive grant programs. And what we would really like to see, because we see such a need, we see such an impact, is we really want to see the federal government commit to making these programs permanent. And then scaling up programs to make a meaningful impact on Montana's food systems as well. So impacts. Across all these programs, there are over 250 farms, farmers markets, and local retailers that are authorized to accept these local food benefits through Farm Connect. And between 4,000 and 5,000 individuals are provided with financial incentives to buy local food each year through our programs. And since inception in 2015, we've been able to recirculate $2.1 million into the local food economy. That is with a 1.5 economic multiplier effect, just so you know. And we're really starting to see behavior change. In 2019, 77% of our participants, and we survey around 100 participants each year, in 2019, 77% of them said that they were at the farmer's market because of the benefit, and they wouldn't be at the farmer's market if they didn't have the benefit to help stretch their food budget. In 2024, we see that only 32% of our participants are saying that the only reason they're at the farmer's market is because of the benefit. And we take that as a sign, and most of our participants do stick with us for several years. we're seeing that people are going to the farmers market now for their own reasons, and not just because of these benefits helping them buy food. And that's really shown that 99% of the participants surveyed believe that shopping at a farmer's market gives them a sense of community belonging. And I think that at the end of the day, that's really what we're after, creating communities so we can all move together into this future where we can kind of help each other resolve some of these climate anxieties, methods to get towards resilience and other things. And we know that we need to do that as a community. Just really quick, if people are looking for a way to get involved, I know Neva likes activism and so do we. If you can believe it, the 2023 Farm Bill is going to get passed in 2025. It's going to be 2 years late. And maybe people are hearing about this in their classes and in other ways, but we still believe that that gives us an opportunity to advocate for all of these programs. In the beginning, Farmer and Rancher, a lot of conservation programs, and all of the food access programs I just talked about are in the Farm Bill. Every single one of them except for WIC is in the Farm Bill. And so we have an opportunity to really say that we want to strengthen these programs, we want to see them become permanent. And if anyone's interested, Grow Montana is our local state food policy coalition that CETA, Farm Connect, and Neva maybe is a founder as well. Grow Montana chose to create a policy toolkit around the Farm Bill, especially around our food access programs. So if people are interested, you can scan this QR code with your phone, or you can go to growmontana.org and find ways to, quick and easy, fill out a form, send it to your representative to say, hey, we want to see strong food and farm and nutrition and beginning farmer rancher programs in the 2025 Farm Bill. Okay, that's my bit.
Okay, I'm just going to wrap us up by talking a little bit about community engagement, how a lot of our programs are unique and really technical. So as far as recruiting volunteers, it's really tough. We have a lot of privacy issues with food access participants that not anyone can just come and volunteer and interface with some of our participants there. You have to have a lot of very, narrow technical knowledge to work with some of our beginning farmers, and so we have to be really creative on how we get people to engage and experience the work that we do at Farm Connect. So we have a Equity in the Food System annual event series. We did not do it this year, hoping to see it come back next year, where we highlight some speakers from across the state and across the nation in Missoula and get everyone together for events and learning from people who are food system leaders and have a very diverse perspectives on our food system in Montana and nationally. Bike to Barns, we do every year, which we connect hundreds of bikers to local farms in Missoula and the Target Range and Orchard Home area. I would love to see some of you out there next year. It's done for this year, just wrapped up a few weeks ago. And a local food and farm passport, which we are revamping. This was a response to COVID-19. People were looking for local food, grocery store shelves were empty. We created basically a guide to over 90 farms in Lake Missoula and Ravalli counties and had people go out on an adventure and get stamps and meet your local farmers, and it was a really great way to have farmers have new customers and for people to access food. And wanted to talk a little bit about where our office is. We are out kind of by, if you know where Big Sky Brewery, Dino's, which is right off of 90. We have a brand new office out there that is county owned and was renovated for Farm Connect Montana to come and be a tenant there. And there's going to be a lot of really exciting things happening. There's also a cabin on the property that was one of the first cabins or structures built in Missoula Valley. So there's a lot of agricultural history there. There's going to be an interpretive trail and a lot of programming opportunities for us to bring people out there and really talk about how agriculture has transformed over the years in the Missoula Valley. It's also where Farm Connect's tool library is, and if you want to come out and visit, just let us know. We'd love to have you come out. It's a really cool spot. We're on to questions.
Thank you, guys. Questions? I had a very specific one. And could you explain the difference between SNAP and double SNAP, and where does the double money
Totally.
come from?
Absolutely. Let me get closer to the mic. So, SNAP is that standard federal benefit program. It is an entitlement program, so as long as your income says that you are within that threshold, you get those benefits. You do have to go through a pretty rigorous application process. It also involves an interview that you have to go to in person still. So, they really put you through some hoops to get that. And, the kind of maximum benefit you're going to get from SNAP is actually pretty good. It's like $200 and change as a maximum benefit, but we see people get between $100 and $200 a month. They might have families, and that actually doesn't go very far. We hear it lasts 2 weeks or less. So what double SNAP does, that SNAP does not, is it is incentivizing people to buy more fruits and vegetables as a nutrition program. So we love SNAP. SNAP has really high dignity and agency for participants because you can buy whatever you want as long as it's not alcohol or prescription drugs or non-food items. You can still buy soda, you could buy sweets. And so there isn't really a component where we're trying to encourage people to shop locally or to make purchases that are in the best interest of their health outcomes. Double SNAP comes in that there is no enrollment process. If you have SNAP, you are already enrolled in double SNAP, and all you have to do is show up at a location on our map, on our list, where you know that you can use those benefits. You bring your EBT card. At farmers markets, you'd show up at the farmers market information booth, swipe your card for as many benefits as you want. Those get turned into tokens. And then at farmers markets, people are eligible to get up to $30 in free fruits and vegetables as a one-to-one match. So if people spent $15 in SNAP, they could get $15 in double SNAP. If they spend, $35 in SNAP, they can still only get $30 in double SNAP. But it does help turn, what would be a $30 SNAP trip at the farmers market into a $60 shopping trip. And then what we kind of, help people think about for their shopping habits is, okay, I can use my SNAP to get bread, eggs, cheese, meat. I'm going to save those tokens for that, and I'm going to save my double SNAP tokens to get my fruits and vegetables, herbs, mushrooms, seeds that grow plants, and starter plants that grow food. So that's kind of the eligibility, and those are the differences between SNAP and double SNAP. It does vary across different site types. So we do have several farms, the Western Montana Growers Co-op, Winter Kist, and in the past Harlequin, who were providing CSA shares as well for SNAP customers. So in those scenarios, SNAP customers would either spend $250 in their benefits at the beginning of the year, and we'd match with $250 in double SNAP. It doesn't exist. People don't get $250 in benefits at once. So the farms then kind of concede that it won't be a typical CSA, and they'll charge those customers monthly for the cost of that CSA. And then at grocery stores, people are eligible for up to $5 per week to accrue these benefits into a loyalty account that they can then spend on fruits and vegetables, and that equals about $260 a year that people can get in double SNAP benefits at grocery stores.
And that both federal programs?
They're both federal programs. Again, SNAP is an entitlement program that's run by the state of Montana. Double SNAP is a competitive grant program that is a private community. It's our nonprofits program. It's funded through a federal grant, but that grant doesn't dictate whether we have the program or not, if that makes sense. So double SNAP could exist without federal support. And in the future, maybe it will.
Great, thanks. Questions?
There's a big climate conference going on campus right now. Steve Running talked this morning and told us how much hotter and drier it's going to get, and how the farmers need to incorporate more organic matter into the soil to hold the moisture better. And also they talked a lot about the health effects of heat and smoke and how it really affects outdoor workers like farmers. So are these two things that you're getting into with new farmers, both thinking about practices that will make them more resilient, maybe even changing crops, not growing crops that need a lot of water or something of that sort, and also how they protect their health in these hotter, smokier conditions?
Yeah, no, it's definitely something we're thinking about a lot. I mean, actually, a lot of the tools we have in our tool library are focused on soil health. So having a flail mower is specifically used to mow down cover crops so it can be mulched into the it's easily used in the top layer of soil and basically degrades quicker. And so we have a flail mower for a tractor and for a walk behind. And those are expensive pieces of equipment and things you don't necessarily want to buy when you're first starting out and you might only use a few times a year. So things like that. And then also we have like low till options, like a power harrow for our walk behind, and working with the conservation district that has a seed drill that basically like pushes seeds into the ground without tilling it. So it's like a good way to for ranchers and stuff, they can go across the ground, plant new seed without tilling the ground and breaking things up, which if you know anything about soil, basically the less we disturb it, the more structure it's going to have and the better maintain that moisture and stuff for plants and hopefully for animals that are grazing on those plants. So that's one focus that we're doing. And we also have been doing soil health workshops in different series throughout the summer to focus on how we can help support farmers that are trying to learn a very complex science and a lot of information. And then the other thing we've seen is actually a lot of producers needing season extension. And so if you paid any attention to the frost this year, I don't know who would, but basically we had, some folks had frost in June, and then again, some folks had frost at the beginning of September. So that gives you 60 days to grow a lot of this stuff. And so season extension support and hoop houses and greenhouses are really expensive to build. And so how can we support and offer cost share programs and things like that has been something that the NRCS and other programs are really working on, which is cool to see. And then as far as wildfire and the smoke, that's it's hard because it's the time of year that everyone's outside farming, and you can only, there's certain things we suggest that we worked with Climate Smart to try and get some information out of working early in the morning is sometimes usually better than later in the day, but it's not necessarily, they're still going to be outside for a good portion of the day. So it's a lot about really small things, honestly, that we're thinking about now. But all things definitely been on our mind. And we have a beginning farmer and rancher advisory committee, which is basically made up of beginning farmers in our community. And a lot of these things come up, and we basically spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the next move is. And thinking about it. It's a good question.
So we heard a couple weeks ago from Kiki and Paulina, and they did a lot of work in seed, and we just learned a whole bunch of nuances, and it's troubling to hear about that. So I was just curious, does Farm Connect Montana support farmers, navigating the world of seed, and especially GMO and Monsanto's and all of this craziness?
So we actually just had a 2-day event in September called Organic Seed Days. And so we actually focused 2 full days on farmers from across western Montana got together, shared seed, shared discussion around how they're producing seed, and we shared, anyone who wanted to, I know there's a lot of discourse around organic production, and, there's a lot of things that I think could be better, but as far as there's a lot of organic seed producers in Montana, and basically focused a lot more on that, on organic seed production and sharing, seed cleaning techniques. And there's really, you heard from, Triple Divide folks and folks doing a lot of really cool seed saving and seed production locally, which is also, bring it back to climate, I'm sure they talked about it, which is if you have locally produced seeds, it's going to be more adapted to really slowly, but it's going to be more adapted to your climate and hopefully produce better and stronger plants. It's a good question. It all starts in the seed, so.
I don't know if you're actively doing this, but are the ways that you're connecting with younger people who are out of their parents' home for the first time and, oh my gosh, my money doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
What are the, I don't know, I haven't seen anything advertised, but what are your plans to help those folks who are just getting into it and needing that off the start?
Are you talking about farming and food access? Should I maybe food access? Yeah,
Food
food
access,
tech-
but farming
yeah.
access is also.
Yeah, we definitely, I mean, I'll talk briefly from the farmer side, but I think the food access side, I feel like we actually have had some high school students take our beginning farmer course, and a lot of folks that are in college take our beginning farmer course, and just like, that interest, and I would, starting early and thinking about these things, because sometimes maybe you won't start a farm till 10 years down the road, but there's so much information out there, and like anyone could take the class. I think we maybe said 14 and up, because other than that, I don't think they're gonna understand everything. But yeah, anyone could take it, and we try and do a little outreach to high school and FFA programs as well. But that's kind of not as big a focus of ours, but we try and welcome anyone in.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying too in terms of like the consumer end of things, where a lot of people get out of their home for the first time, they're trying to prepare their own meals, maybe they're going to be relying on something that's not very healthy because it's cheaper. Maybe they don't know that there's a food bank on campus where they can go and get some free food. Maybe they don't know that there are benefits that can be accepted at the farmers market. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to be involved, a lot of outreach, a lot of community partners that help access those kind of pockets of people that we don't necessarily have access to all the time. Did Garden City Harvest already present? So Garden City Harvest, who people might be familiar with, and us more so now, like we're trying to get people started really young in this journey. And so we have a new program called Montanans Who Cook. We've been working out with the DeSmet School. I don't know if people know, it's out in the county, and some other schools around town, and then really closely with All Nations Health Center, basically to help youth who are going through this school not only understand the importance of food and agriculture and the farmer in the classroom work that you guys are going to probably learn about Garden City Harvest, but we're also trying to teach them to be like advocates for their own health and nutrition by teaching them how to do healthy cooking, how to balance proteins versus other things. And we actually have registered dietitians on our staff, and then we have a contract registered dietitian also that goes out into the community. And then we bring all of those kiddos to the farmers market. And actually, if anyone wants to come by the farmers market this Saturday at the Clark Fork River Market, we'll be doing a farmers market scavenger hunt. Anyone is welcome to join and participate, but it is geared towards these families that we serve. And so we help bring those kids to the farmers market and help kind of get familiar with it, because those spaces can be kind of intimidating for a lot of people, and they can also feel like privileged spaces and in other ways. So we're just trying to help people kind of learn how to do that at an earlier phase. And then I also just want to say, again, back to that kind of stigma piece about people maybe not wanting to participate in programs because it's like, oh, I can do this on my own, or I don't need that help. Or I hear a lot of young people especially say, I don't want to take that benefit from someone else. And I actually hear a lot of people in the aging demographic say that as well. And that's not the case with any of these programs. The case with these programs, like the Senior Farmers Market program, is we can ask the next year for the same amount of money that we were able to spend and redeem the prior year. So the more people who are using the benefits and actually take advantage of it, the more we can ask for the next year. And then maybe they don't need it the next year, but they're going to open up a spot for someone else to have it. So my big message is like, don't be afraid to participate in it if you think you're taking it from someone else, because the resources are there. And so reach out to us, reach out to the SNAP office, reach out to the campus food pantry, and yeah, there's lots of resources.
So, go ahead, Elaine.
Do you guys find that you work with more organic or non-organic farmers? And if so, do you ever try to like kind of incentivize them to grow organic at all?
We work with both, and I don't, I think it usually just comes down to a conversation of like what they're growing and what their market channels are, because we try and find the balance of, we know farmers need to make money to be sustainable, but they also, most farmers we work with want to grow things sustainably. So that's usually what we're looking at, is like, how can we move both of those forward? And sometimes that means getting organic certification so you can sell your product at a higher price point. But some of that times that means like it doesn't make sense for you to get certified organic because you're already doing everything that's kind of under that label, but you're not necessarily you're not in those channels that maybe you might not make more money there. But it's really a person-to-person conversation and trying to be supportive of, and also just like we work with each person on what their vision for their farm is. And also some folks aren't ready to make that switch yet, or they have a really bad weed problem. They're like, I have to spray once a year. Like, I can't get past that yet. It's like, great, we'll work on your soil health, or like we'll work on something else first and try and get you to like that endpoint that you're trying to get to. But we don't discriminate on whoever want to walk through the door and want to talk through like their practices and what they're hoping to do, you know, and we're hoping to just get them to where they want to go. And we definitely have, you know, we try and support, we're, you know, have focus more on sustainable practices. But that doesn't have to look like certified organic. That can look like a lot of different things. Yeah.
You guys mentioned that CFAC was founded in response to Missoula County Food Assessment. Could you talk a little about what that is and what it assesses and what kinds of things you're hoping to address within that assessment?
So the last assessment was done in 2004, and we are trying so hard, and we've tried since I've been at CFAC for almost 5 years, and every single year we're trying to find funding to update it, especially after COVID and everything. And so maybe Neva wants to talk a little bit to what the original one
Sure.
focused on.
Yeah, well, so it was actually a pretty amazing process. It took 2 years. And we had 2 faculty who were facilitating it, myself and a social work faculty. And in the end, we ended up with like 50 different students involved and over 700 Missoula County residents in one way or another. And we had a steering committee of people in the community that really determined what the research questions were, and then came up with recommendations based on the findings. And we asked 2 basic questions. One is, what does it take to keep agriculture viable in Missoula County? And then the other was like, what assets and concerns do people have in the county regarding food consumption? And so, and then we used the results from that to make recommendations, one of which was the creation of CFAC. And we had a big discussion about whether CFAC should be a nonprofit standalone organization or whether it should be part of local government and advise local government on decisions related to food policy. And we decided on the former, to be a nonprofit, but then 4 or 5 years ago, and I think Jenny sits on the city and county created a food policy advisory board. And I will just say the thing that kind of undergirds all this work is that most food and farm policy is set at the federal level or even international level. A little bit at the state level, and historically very, very little at the local level. And people in the local food movement over the last 25, 30 years have really tried to shift that and say, no, food affects our lives. We should have food policy advisory boards, groups working on food issues in our communities. Just like we do, we have air quality boards, we have water quality, transportation. Why not food, right? A fundamental thing. So it kind of comes out of that whole idea, and community food assessments are really intended to be very localized and practical in the sense of trying to understand what's happening in a community, what people think should happen, where the assets, not just the problems, but where are the assets that we have. It was kind of a big part of our discussion at the time. So I'm hopeful we'll get a 20-year reunion or whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
the question is very community driven. What does the community want to? What answers to what questions? Community want the assessment and research to focus on. So, yeah, even just getting to that piece takes a lot of time and resource and meeting with and just being out in the community and stuff. So, funding, just looking for funding to start that process.
Well, I had a question, kind of a pushback question, lack of a better word. So, I think that one could argue with respect to the food access programs and to some extent the Beginning Farmer Rancher program, that these are service activities. These are not about changing structural inequities in our communities, the root causes of hunger, the root causes of why land is so expensive and so inaccessible, why beginning farmers have challenges accessing credit, technical advice, and on and on, all right? I mean, and I'm not putting you down, I'm just saying, like, reflecting on hearing what you said, and saying, well, CFAC started as a policy coalition, and that is certainly true. But how do you reconcile or think about that distinction today? Right, like for instance, there's a big critique made by some folks about food banks. Food banks provide enough food so people don't rise up and fight against the inequities in the system, right? And I'm not arguing against food banks, but there, you can see what I mean, right? So what do you think about that?
I guess. I think my approach, the way I think about our programming is we're helping farmers start farms now. Like it's, it's, I think everyone has to find their niche in the nonprofit advocacy world, or otherwise you can't do enough and you can't do it all. And so, for at least for our program, I see it as we're helping producers get on land now and in our system that we have now. Would I like to change the system? Yes. And do we try and do that through, providing input and feedback to a lot of the federal programs that we work with? Yeah, I mean, a lot of the funding comes federally, and we're providing direct feedback to those programs and how we're doing things and what works and what doesn't. But we need, folks, we can't just have a barren, 10 years of no farmers. So
Can't wait for the structural change before
Yeah. I mean, it's not a perfect system by any means, but I think that's how I think of it, is like we're getting people on the ground now in the system that we have, and I'm hoping there is other folks working on it from the other way, and advocacy and like working on legislature and working on the farm bill to change things. And it is cool to see things change since I've been at CFAC, and like the programs change and availability and how they're shaped has changed. And I wouldn't say I necessarily have been part of that process at all, like in that way. I've been mostly on the ground with farmers, trying to work in the system that we have now.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, and those federal, just to follow that, those federal programs, like the Beginning Farmer Rancher program in the USDA, wouldn't exist without the advocacy partners that are at the federal level, for sure.
Yeah.
I have kind of a sad thing to tack on to that. That I think, there's like this nonprofit conundrum of, do you chase funding to keep your organization financially healthy, or do you really double down on your values and say, okay, maybe we're not going to get some grants because they don't maybe exist to create, for this food justice project, whereas service projects are really well funded. And so I think there could be a strategy of, okay, how do we get this funding to provide this service while still kind of on the side being a little, I don't want to say sneaky, but how do we leverage those funds to better serve people in the way they want to be served, and then give them the agency to see that change? And I really think it starts with individuals. But at the same time, I think sometimes nonprofits chase funding, and again, the services that we provide, that's how we demonstrate that we are serving individuals rather than a system. And I'd love to see more food system funders out there in the world. And there is this new program, I don't know if anyone's heard of it, it's called Growing Justice. So cool, it's a rad grant program. They are not about like, here's what you have to do, and then we'll fund only these things. They really want people to say, this is the transformation we're looking for, mostly around racial equity. And we want to see it done in that way, so we do see funders now coming forward, and I think we see that funding model changing. And then at the same time, there are old funders that we still work with that are saying, you have to do X, Y, and Z, and here's your huge reporting process, and good luck actually doing anything outside of that. So we kind of deal with all of those, and I just think it's an unfortunate kind of system of the nonprofit sector.
This might be more of like a design question, but like, are y'all mostly federal grant and like foundation funded? That's like the majority.
Yeah, we waver between, it used to be a lot higher, but we're still at even higher than this, but we're still at like 60 to 70% federal grant funded. And then the other chunk is foundations, individuals, businesses. Yeah.
I would love to learn and know more about your Land Link program and how that helps beginning farmers and ranchers access and afford land. And I'm also curious who these landowners are that are working with you and what incentivizes them to be a part of the program.
Yeah. So most of the landowners on the site are just folks that don't want to sell their land to you. Maybe it was farmed land, maybe it was they ranched it themselves, or maybe they just have land and they don't want to sell it to a developer or see it used in a different way. Like maybe it's good soil. It's usually just like a values thing that they're just like, I would like to see a farmer on this property. And so all different sizes of properties and types of properties. And then I don't know how many states have it, but there's quite a few states across the country that have land link programs, and I've met with several of them over the years, and it is like the same issue of just like there's connection that happens online, but usually not fast enough for the landowners, so that often like it takes a while to find the right person, and so working on those relationships takes time, and so the map and the resource is just one piece of it, and we found that really the way we're going to make matches is through making personal connections, which takes a lot of staff time, but we have been doing that more, and like this summer we had what we called open field events. They're like open houses, but for farms. And so we'd host it at available land, like a landowner would have a property that they wanted to find a new farmer to lease it or buy it, and then we would invite potential like land seekers who are interested in that property to that land. We would walk it together. I would facilitate conversations with those folks around like, is this a good fit? Like, what are the questions we need to be asking? One, even if it wasn't a good fit, they got practice of like, what are the questions they need to ask? What are you looking at? And I think that's kind of the way we're going to move forward, is like trying to develop those like really close-knit, like in-person events. Basically, we also last year we had like basically kind of like a speed dating event that actually was kind of successful in a weird way. It was a little awkward at first, but then people got into it. But just having a ton of landowners, farmers in the room, and then walked around, like you had to kind of have your elevator pitch ready, both sides. Like it wasn't just the land seekers, we also had the landowners, like pitch your land to this person and like why it would be a good fit. And so we're moving in that direction, but it takes a lot of staff capacity, a lot of time to do that, instead of like, posting the listing online to be quick, but we haven't found that is enough to like really make matches, because it's a really intimate relationship between, like, especially if someone's going to stay on the land, like the landowner has to live there. So yeah, I don't know if that answered all your questions.
Yeah, I'm curious, how are they working price-wise to help them out since they do want it to stay in agriculture?
Yeah, it depends on the land, but we usually, they're usually motivated to keep it lower than like market value price, and selling is a different story, but leasing, we usually seem to think they can find a price point that works, but selling can be the harder point, where it's like they have a lot of other people competing that are with a bigger, it's more cash, but if they're motivated enough, they'll work it out. And there's also like landowner financing and different options where you can like slowly purchase the land from someone, and there is some innovative ways. And yeah, I mean, I think we have to do things differently than normal in order for it to work for farmers, because they can't afford to buy a property that the mortgage is way more than they can afford. I mean, selling vegetables is not super lucrative business, so you gotta kind of have cheap rent. So, yeah, finding innovative ways to, yeah, get farmers on land. Vicki?
Do your education or policy programs get into the area of water rights? And if you do you encourage them to participate in some of the watershed groups in the tribe are getting away from first in time, first in right, the rest of you are just out of luck. And they organize the farmers in a watershed to coordinate their irrigation so that everybody gets some. So have you worked in any of that? I mean, the Blackfoot Challenge does it, and the Confederated States Shinkooti Tribe are two that work really hard in that area.
Yeah, I haven't worked directly in like policy around it or like change in that way, but I'm usually at the point where I'm having a conversation with someone looking at a piece of land and being like, dig deep in the water rights for this land, know what you're getting into. So that's a conversation my most common conversation usually around water rights is just like, let's dig in and make sure that you know what you're getting and not just assuming or just, making sure the landowner knows and has familiarity about what it looks like year to year.
Yeah, but if you're pretty far down and right, it's nice to be a part of a larger
I
group that says, let's try to share.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know a ton about those and who's, developed relationships, so, I don't think that is connected.
Yeah, I could tell a little story where we bought this land west of town, and when we bought it, it came with this document that was supposedly documenting the water rights, and it was like from early 1900s, and you could barely read it. It's like in this script, and but it comes in a PDF. But it turned out that water right no longer existed because the ditch companies that had issued that right were later dissolved through a court decree. And I mean, we have water, it's just that it was then consolidated into this larger thing called the Missoula Irrigation District. But there's no actual right that has a date on it anymore, which, Vicki's referring to the fact that with our water rights, the earlier you're right, earlier in time, then you're a senior water right holder. So if water becomes scarce, you can get your water before people who are junior. Anyway, it was an interesting lesson, and I got, it actually took me a bunch of digging to figure it out. And even though we bought the land and we knew there was water, and the realtor knew nothing.
Mm-hmm. And oftentimes the landowner doesn't even know they've been using it.
Yeah, I mean, here we were, people who trained in agriculture. Mm-hmm.
They don't make it easy to find.
So I learned a few tricks about our local rights anyway.
Who did have the certificate?
So there is no actual certificate of right, but according to the Missoula, all these various ditches got consolidated into this thing that's called the Missoula Irrigation District. And it doesn't actually, as I understand it, I've never seen in this new system a date on it. But they're like, oh, we know you're a big water user, it's not a problem. And it actually isn't a problem, but so far. And I don't anticipate it being, just given where it is. But anyway, there's lessons. I get lessons all the time in this project. But, all right, well, we're pretty much out of time, and I do want to give you guys your papers back and get your papers. So let's thank these guys for their time.